Hello everybody, it's Tarun. Welcome to your fourth tutorial in the CSS for presentation course. In this tutorial, I'll start with Unit 2, which is formatting text, and it will also include more selectors. So now that we have gotten our feet wet formatting text, and we'll be ready to jump into the deep end. So by the end of this unit, we'll pick up 15 new CSS properties used to manipulate the appearance of text, and along the way you will also learn how to use more powerful selectors for targeting elements in a particular context with a specific ID or class name. Okay, the nature of the web makes specifying a type tricky, and if not downright frustrating, particularly if you have experience designing for print. Okay, there is no way to know for sure whether the font you specify will be available on, or how large or small the type will appear when it hits your users. Okay, so it's your users browsers. We'll address the best practices for dealing with these challenges as we go along. So throughout this unit, we'll be going through a HTML page and practicing our properties on it only. So now I'll tell you what I'll cover in this unit. In this unit, I will cover the font related properties, web fonts and font stacks, text line settings such as line height, indents and alignment, text treatment such as underlines, capitalization and drop shadows, letter and word spacing, ID and class selectors. Okay, so without wasting time, now let's start with the font properties. So when I design a text document, one of the first things which I do is specify a font. In CSS, fonts are specified using a little bundle of font related properties, which are for typeface, size, weight and font style. And there is also a shortcut property that lets you specify all of the font attributes in one fell swoop. Okay, so there are 6 properties are there, but I'll tell you one by one. So first of all, I'll just tell you the names. Okay, so here you can see that these are the 6 properties which I'll be teaching you. So now we'll start with the first property. Okay, just wait. Yes. So first of all, I'll tell you about specifying the font name. So what we'll do here, we'll choose a typeface or font family, as it is called in CSS, for your text, and it is a good place to start. So let's begin with the font family property. So how using the font family property to specify a font or list of fonts known as font stock will be shown by this example. Let me show you this example. Okay, here I have made the font for every body element as Arial, and for paragraphs I have made the font family as Duru Sans, Verdana and Sans Serif. Okay, so here are some important syntax requirements. All fonts name, with the exception of generic font families, must be capitalized. For example, use this Arial instead of this. Okay, and use commas to separate multiple font names as shown in the second example here. Okay, and notice that the font names contain a character space here, as you can see, after the comma. Okay, so now I'll show you what will it do. So here you can see that it has changed the font for the whole body as Arial, but for paragraphs it is Duru Sans, Verdana and Sans Serif. Okay, So you might be asking that why specify more than one font. So that's a good question, and it brings us to one of the challenges of specifying fonts for web pages. So now I'll talk you through the font limitations. Okay, browsers are limited to displaying fonts they have access to. Traditionally, that meant the fonts that were already installed on the user's hard drive. In 2010, however, there was a boom in browser support for embedded web fonts using the CSS @font face rule. Okay, @font face rule. So it became possible for designers to provide their own fonts. Okay, but back to our font family rule. Even when you specify that the font should be like say Futura style rule, if the browser cannot find it, uh, for example, if the font is not installed on user's computer or the provided web font fails to load, the browser uses its default font instead. Fortunately, CSS allows us to provide a list of backup fonts. Uh, okay, that font stack we saw earlier. And should our first choice not be available, if the first specified font is not found, the browser tries the next one and down through the list until it finds the one that works. And in the second rule of the font family shown in the previous example, if the browser does not find Duru Sans, it will use Verdana, and if Verdana is not available, it will substitute some other sans serif font. Okay. So now let's move forward to the next topic, which is generic font families. That last option, some other sans serif font, bears more discussion. Sans serif is just one of the 5 generic font families that you can specify with the font family property. When you specify a generic font family, the browser chooses an available font from that stylistic category. So for serif, I'll just tell you the 5 generic font families. Okay, but before that I'll just show you a figure with examples from each family, and generic font family names do not need to be capitalized. So these are the 5 generic font families. The first one is serif, and its example are Times New Roman, and Georgia. Okay, the next is sans serif. Its example are Arial Black, Verdana, Helvetica, Trebuchet MS, Geneva, etc. The next generic font family is monospace, and its example are Courier New, and Andale Mono. Okay, and the next one is cursive, which contains Apple Chancery, Zaf Chancery, and Comic Sans. Then the last one is fantasy, which contains Impact, Western, or any other decorative font. Okay. The serif typefaces have decorative slab-like appendix serifs on the ends of certain letter smokes. Okay, so this is decorative serif stroke. And in sans serif, typefaces have straight letter strokes that do not end in serifs. So here you can see that. And in monospace, also called constant width typefaces, all characters take up the same amount of space on a line. And for example, here you can see that a capital W will be no wider than a lowercase I. Compare this to proportional typefaces such as the one as you can see now. Okay. Cursive fonts emulate a script or handwritten appearance, as you can see here. And the fantasy fonts are purely decorative and would be appropriate for headlines and other display type. Fantasy fonts are rarely used for web text due to cross-platform availability and legibility. Okay. So now let's move forward to the next topic, which is font stack strategies. The best practice for specifying fonts for web pages is to start with your first choice. Provide some similar alternatives and then end with a generic font family that at least gets user in the right place. Okay. For example, if you want an upright sans serif font, You might start with your favorite font, Futura. List a few that are more common, such as Universe, Tahoma, and Geneva, and finish with the generic sans serif. There is no limit to the number of fonts you can include, but many designers strive to keep it under 10. A good font stack should include stylistically related fonts that are known to be installed on most computers. Sticking with fonts that come with Windows, Mac OS, and Linux operating systems, as well as fonts that get installed with popular software packages such as MS Office and Adobe Creative Suites, that give you a solid list of web-safe fonts to choose from. The charts and statistics provided by the following sites are excellent resources for finding what fonts are commonly available. So I'll just tell you these sites. So there are 3 sites, and if you are interested in learning more about mastering font stacks, I recommend the following articles, but be sure to do your own web search to find up-to-date recommendations as well. So these are the links if you want to learn more. So as you see, specifying fonts for the web is more likely merely suggesting them, and you don't have absolute control over which font your users will see. So you might get your first choice, you might get the generic fallback. It's the one of those web design quirks you have to live with. Now seems like a good time to get started formatting the HTML page. We'll add new style rules one at a time, and we'll learn each new property. Okay, so we'll start by specifying font size. Okay, and we'll specify the font size with the name with the font size property, okay, which is font size property. And just let me show you one more thing. Okay, so for the font size property, we have the following things. We have values, which is length and then unit, and then percentage. We can specify the value by percentage. Then XX means small, X means small, and then we can directly use small, medium, large, X large. Sorry, XX not means small. It is extra small. It is extra small. It is small, medium, large, extra large, smaller, larger, and inherent. And by default it is medium, and it applies to all elements, and it inherits yes. Okay, so you can specify text in several ways at a specific size using one of the CSS length units, okay, which is EM. So here just let me change it a bit. Okay, so this is our style. So here I can change the font size. So how will I change the font size? Okay, so if I want to change the font size of my heading 1, okay, so I'll just remove the others. And here in this I'll specify the property font size, and then let's say I am defining it 1.5 EM, and EM is a unit for CSS length units. So if I go ahead and save it, so now let's see what happens in the browser. Where does the content go? Just let me see. Okay, I found the mistake. I have errorly removed the style closing tag. So let's save it and run now. What happens? So So you can see that it is showing the size 1.5 em. So you might be thinking that nothing has changed. So now let's change the size to 5 em. So now let's see what happens. So you can see that it changes size. Okay. So when specifying a number of units, be sure that the unit abbreviation immediately follows the number with no extra character space in between. So if you write like this, then it is incorrect. Okay. And the second way to specify text size is by percentage. So you can percent up or percent down any size of anything. So if let's say if I change it to 75% of the original one, not the new one, the original one. So you can see that it is now smaller than H1 only. So now if I change it to 150, so you can see that it has increased. Okay. Then we can also specify size using the abbreviations which I told you till now. So now if I use XS large, which is extra large, so now let's see what happens. So let's save and then run it in the browser. So now here you can see that it has increased the size. The next and last method to specify the font size is by the relative keyword, which is larger or smaller. So let's say if I change it to smaller now. Okay, now let's see what happens in the browser. So you can see that it has been reduced. So I'll just cut to the chase and tell you that despite all these options, the preferred values for font sizes in the contemporary web design are EM measurements and percentage values, or a combination of the two. So I'll just explain the font size values in the next tutorial. So we'll start the discussion there. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.